Hi, everyone. Welcome to session number 19. I'm Paul. This is Terry. Let's keep rocking and rolling.
Here we go. First of all, there are a few things that I want to just kind of bring everyone up to date on to kind of fill in some missing pieces as we go along. We use our Tibetan bowl, Paul's Tibetan singing bowl,
Which was a gift from you.
many years ago, and it was actually made in North India, and this has a little statuette of the Buddha, seated Buddha, in the center of it. So it's just one tool that people can use for their meditation practice. And every time we do things like that, have a set routine, whether it's incense or a singing bowl or a chime, and use the same chair, we create an aura around that area. That becomes our sacred area. And it doesn't have to be a whole room. It can be a corner of a room. But it should be someplace where there isn't a whole lot of foot traffic from other people wandering in and out. As much as possible, it should be a quiet place that is not very frequently the room where other people congregate, where there are many vibrations. Shouldn't be like a media room where you have all of the sound and emotions that are stirred up by that. A quiet place that is your sacred spot, and that is the very best place to meditate.
And you can create that anywhere. If you don't have a full room, like Terry said, a corner of a room, and just reserve that as your special space. And when you go there routinely to meditate, you'll see and feel that it's a little bit easier to drop into a meditation because the vibes are already prepared for you. You've been preparing them at time and time again.
And that's the point. To get the aura of that location, because it does have its own aura without you being present, because you have imbued it with those vibrations. And it's the same thing with a home or an apartment. When you first move to a new place, it has an aura already. And trust your instinct. If you ever are looking at a potential spot to live in, just check, how do I feel in this space? If it doesn't feel good, don't even consider it. It's way too difficult to change some of those vibrations. It can take years to overcome some of those bad vibrations, and you just have to be sensitive enough. If you're not sure, ask some of your friends who do seem to be more sensitive to visit it with you and just say, what are you feeling? Do you pick up anything that maybe I'm not picking up on? It's very important because over time, our space takes on all of the vibrations of what has happened there most recently. And by recent, I mean years. So over time, it has this tremendous aura. If you are a spiritual person, someone who always has a higher vibration that you take with you wherever you go, the more time you spend in a location, the more that location takes on your vibrations. The Mahatmas point this out too. Whenever they spent a lot of time at certain locations, for example at Adyar, for years afterwards, their vibration could be felt. Now, I don't know about a century later. I kind of doubt that there's a whole lot after 100 years, but certainly after a few weeks or months of their visiting, it does still have that vibration to go with it.
To give yourself an experience of what we're talking about, you can visit any old church or temple. Mm-hmm. If you've ever toured Notre Dame, for example, or any of the, like St. Peter's Basilica, well, that has tourists all day long, but any old building, place of worship, an altar, and even a new church, you might feel something when you're around an altar. it's the same concept. There are intentions and energy and vibes being imbued into that location time and time again, day after day, year after year, century after century in some cases. You'll feel it. If you're at all sensitive, you'll know what we're talking about, and we can create that for ourselves as well.
I used to visit those places quite often, especially in Europe, but I stopped because to me the vibrations are really heavy. All the years of penitence and anguish and people's emotions, it's overwhelming to me.
There is that for sure. This kind of proves the point. To feel the vibrations, and we choose which vibrations to inject our space with.
Yes.
Hopefully we're not doing that in our space and saying Hail Marys all day and repenting yourself. I mean, maybe you are, I don't know. But
So just be aware. Watch. One of our jobs as potential chelas is to observe. Talk less, tell your own opinions less, and simply observe other people, events, everything around you, and then make deductions based on that, but not emotional deductions, logical deductions. Those are perfectly fine. Yes, we do have to judge, but it should not be an emotional judgment. Oh, I hate that. Oh, I love that. That's pretty useless. But when you actually observe it and extract data from it, that's scientific.
And that really is what we keep talking about whenever we say see clearly.
Yes.
We do. And you can use the word judgment, but we're not judging with emotion, like Terry said. We're seeing things as they are, or as to the best of our ability as they are, without clouding it. That's what we're talking about. Then you can use the word make judgments or make discernment calls. That's how we should be operating.
Emotion that we inject into a situation puts another filter that makes seeing clearly less and less possible. All right. We, at the very beginning of our series, mentioned a poem that HPB wrote that was found after she died.
This was never published in a book. It was never in her book, in any of her books.
Not while she was alive, no. So it was published afterwards. But it says, the poem, very short and succinct, it describes the path of the aspirant. And it says, there is a road, steep and thorny, beset with perils of every kind, but yet a road. And it leads to the very heart of the universe. I can tell you how to find those who will show you the secret gateway that opens inward only and closes fast behind the neophyte forevermore. There is no danger that dauntless courage cannot conquer. There is no trial that spotless purity cannot pass through. There is no difficulty that strong intellect cannot surmount. For those who win onwards, there is reward past all telling, the power to bless and save humanity. For those who fail, there are other lives in which success may come. In very few words, she nailed it. She absolutely caught the essence of this whole path that we are trying to follow. So, again, this we'll put a link to an image of this, and if you print it on good photo paper, you can cut it out so that it will fit perfectly in an 8x10 frame like this one is. And if you care to have that in your meditation spot, that is something that I always like to have nearby.
It's kind of a mission statement for an aspirant.
Yes.
It's like it describes the mission.
Right, exactly. I recite it every single day, more than once.
We can reference, I believe it was the first or second session where we went line by line and expounded upon each concept in that poem.
we spent quite a bit of time going through the whole thing because of just how clearly it lays out the path ahead of us.
We'll put a link to that video below.
I'm not very good at self-promoting, and I forgot to mention that our own book is available not only in English, but also in Spanish. Our good friend in Puerto Rico, Fred Fernandez Cole, way back in 2011, before this was even completely written, I was giving a presentation to the group there.
Oh, that is the Spanish version.
And he said, when you get your book finished, I want to translate it for you. And so I kept that in mind, and he came through. He did an excellent job on the Spanish translation. It is available on Amazon. And anyone who is in a foreign country who may be watching this and would like to have a copy, contact us and we will help you get a copy of it if you would care to have that.
It's been used as the course text in multiple yoga teacher trainings, by the way, as well.
There are quite a few theosophical groups that have used our book as a text for a study group. In fact, I think the Phoenix study group is the most recent one. I think they started one just this past January.
And Terry and I also have classes on our book as well. I routinely run an online and in-person course on the concepts in that book, usually once a year. So there'd be more information about that coming too.
I want to read a passage that I came across in this little book, Letters from the Masters of Wisdom, Series 1. Every once in a while, things that we are discussing, I'll be reading. Every night I spend time reading something theosophical. And it's amazing how often, after some question comes up, I'll be reading just at random something, pick it up and read something. It's like, that's exactly what we were talking about. This part is a little more general, but this is a letter in 1885 that K.H. wrote to a different Chela, Mohini M. Chatterjee, who was one of his rising stars. They were hoping, again, that he might be the one that would be able to replace HPB and fulfill a similar function. He was sent from India to London with HPB in 1885 for that very purpose, for him to be trained in the Western world and to be a conduit between the East and the West. So he wrote a fairly long letter to Mohini, and among other things, he was talking about plagiarism, about his idea, and this is the Asian concept, is that no one owns ideas. In the Western world, you can trademark an idea. You can patent it if it has to do with some invention. If you write it down, those are your words. You own those words. They don't recognize that because they see things on the mental plane and they're all over. It's on the internet already. And they're like, we absolutely do not understand this concept that you Westerners have, that you can own an idea. So as far as they're concerned, they don't own any idea, even if they've expressed it. So this is what he says after kind of talking about that to Mohini. Thus, not only you, a Chela of mine, but anyone else is at liberty to take anything, whole pages, if thought proper, from any of my copied letters, and convert their dross into pure ore of gold. And he was talking specifically about the Mahatma letters to A.P. Sinnett because many of the members of the society had copied some of those. Senate would lend them or give people access to them, and they would spend hours making copies of these letters because the information was so profound. And so he's referring specifically to the Mahatma letters, provided they have well grasped the thought. So as long as you convey the thought behind what he was saying, if you can come up with a better way of presenting it, he said, go for it. So I've always felt a little bit strange about the editing of our material, but it's like, damn, he just gave us permission right here. If we can make it more succinct, more accessible, more understandable, go for it.
I love that.
All right, there was another quote that I wanted to talk about because in our last session we talked about the Mahatma's attitude or opinion of religious organizations.
And there were some strong words used. There were some strong words used.
They have very strong opinions on them, and they don't have a good opinion of religious organizations. They're not talking about the original religion that was instituted by Buddha or by Jesus. They have no problem with those. They are exalted, enlightened teachers as far as they are concerned. What they do have a problem with is people who distort their words and turn them around to make them reinforce their own attitudes and gives them the authority to often mistreat other people. So here's something that HPB was saying with regard to that. And no, this actually is a different topic. I take that back. This one is where she talks about the difference between these so-called seers, religious seers, not the founders of the religions, but the later ones, and the Mahatmas. What is the difference? And also she compares the methods of the adepts to those of scientists. And she says that those opinions of the seers have been confirmed by other people. So in this sense, it's exactly like science, where you have to have your data confirmed by other people with similar experience. It can't be just any Joe Schmo. It's got to be someone who knows what they're talking about. So this is what she said. What the inquirer says, well, but what's your data for this assertion? She says, what science in general will never accept as proof, the cumulative testimony of an endless series of seers who have testified to this fact. Their spiritual visions, real explorations, by and through physical and spiritual senses, untrammeled by blind flesh, were systematically checked and compared one with the other, and their nature sifted. All that was not corroborated by unanimous and collective experience was rejected, while that only was recorded as established truth which, in various ages, under different climes, and throughout an untold series of incessant observations, was found to agree and receive constantly further corroboration. The methods used by our scholars and students of the psycho-spiritual sciences do not differ from those of students of the natural and physical sciences, as you may see. Only, our fields of research are on two different planes, and our instruments are made by no human hands, for which reason, perchance, they are all the more reliable. So that's very important to note. They don't accept anything as doctrine unless it has been corroborated by every other member of the hierarchy who is at a similar or higher level than the person who has observed it. And if at any point, just like in science, if at any point in the future there is something that disproves it, it's discarded, and they'll start.
They don't hang on to it or grip to it.
Exactly.
This was my idea. I saw it. This has to be the way it is. No, they don't.
So all the more reason why we don't own ideas.
Which book was this from again?
This is from The
one.
Key to Theosophy.
The Key to Theosophy.
I'm sorry. Yeah, The Key to Theosophy. It's really, really good for a beginning theosophist, and even those of us who have studied it for years. It's worthwhile to go back and study it again. All right.
This might be a good time to mention the fact that we have custom-made subtitles for every single video, and we think you should turn them on because some of the names we're mentioning, if you're visual like I am, someone who happens to be sitting right here has carefully created literal subtitles for all of our sessions. So please, if you're watching this on YouTube, turn on your subtitles and they'll be there.
Yes. I start with the auto-generated ones from the sources of YouTube, and then I go through word by word and I change the misspellings that it comes up with, make all of the spellings correct. I do miss some once in a while. I put in periods and commas where that would help with understanding. And the major intent, not only does it help English language viewers, but we want to be able to let YouTube auto-generate captions for people in foreign countries. And hopefully this will make everyone's viewing experience more reliable and more useful. So, like for example, I mentioned Mohini M. Chatterjee. If you didn't catch the name, turn on your subtitles and you'll see that it has been spelled correctly according to the source, whatever source it came from. Once in a while, in the Mahatma letters, they will use an older spelling because this is transliteration from Hindi and from Sanskrit and from Tibetan. And over time, the scholars come up with better transliterations. So sometimes they're updated to make them conform to more modern transliteration techniques. There's one thing that we've been talking about, the retreat that KH is on for the next 3 months. And I came across a letter that was written in October 1881.
Terry, before you read it, let's recap quickly. It's not a physical retreat where he's on a vacation somewhere physically. His body is in a state of meditation, probably lying down, maybe sitting up in a sort of tower-like building that is being attended to by some of the other masters or students or chelas. And his higher awareness, his consciousness is on a retreat. So it's most likely his causal body or his soul or his higher mental body that is experiencing something very profound.
And in his case, it may be his Buddhic body.
There you go. It's higher. It's definitely not astral, and it's not lower mental, and it's not pranic. Those are, yeah.
So
sedentary.
she wrote this letter to a member of the society, a Mary Hollis Billings, who was a medium, an American medium. And of her, KH said that she may not be the best medium, but she is definitely the most honest medium that we know of. And in fact, they sometimes used her to transmit messages to individuals. They inspired her. She had a spirit guide that was known as Ski. So just like in the case with the Imperator, where some very high member of the hierarchy used that entity to transmit information to Stanton Moses, which he completely messed up because he couldn't recognize the difference. They were doing the same thing with this Mrs. Hollis Billings. She went to London at one point, and she helped to establish the London Lodge in England. And Blavatsky wrote this letter to her talking about KH's retreat. And in this letter, she said, KH is now gone to sleep for 3 months to prepare during this samadhi, or continuous trance state, for his initiation, the last but one, when he will become one of the highest adepts. Poor KH, his body is now lying cold and stiff in a separate square building of stone with no windows or doors in it, the entrance to which is effected through an underground passage from a door in Tung Ting, which is a reliquary room situated in every temple or lamasery. And his spirit is quite free. An adept might lie so for years, when his body was carefully prepared for it beforehand by mesmeric passes, etc. It is a beautiful spot where he is now in the square tower. The Himalayas on the right and a lovely lake near the lamasery. His Chohan, spiritual instructor, master, and the chief of a Tibetan monastery, takes care of his body. M also goes occasionally to visit him. It is an awful mystery, that state of cataleptic sleep for such a length of time. So that gives us a little more insight into this. They've used the term bodhisattva many times, that this was the stage that bodhisattvas went through.
And bodhisattva is one step below Buddha?
Yes, it's in preparation of becoming a Buddha. And as we found out before, there have been 28 Buddhas total. I've been trying to find out if there have been any since Gautama. And apparently this Tsongkhapa was also a Buddha, at least is considered one. So we may be wrong if we say that he was the only one. He was the first of our humanity, but apparently not the most recent one.
Interesting. Isn't it interesting how the religion sprung up around Gautama, but not Tsongkhapa? He didn't create there was no religion. It's not necessary for someone at that level to create a religion, but the first one did, second one did not. He wasn't exoteric at all.
Gautama's mission in life was to reform Hinduism. He saw the state to which it had fallen, which was far from the original state. And he recognized the need to rescue these people, to give them a chance to get away from that. And as we're going to find out, not today, but in a different session, he had a large degree of success. Much of India embraced Buddhism after Gautama left this planet. But gradually, the Brahmin priests overcame that and brought it right back down again.
And then came Patanjali a few hundred years later with yoga, with the Yoga Sutras, and that was, I consider that to be a reformation as well, or an attempt at reforming again, but there was no religion that proceeded forth from the Yoga Sutras, but it did create a tradition of Raja Yogis. It's interesting how it didn't come into a religion, though, and it's still very prominent today, Raja Yoga, obviously.
Yes, it is sort of a religion for perceptive students. It's not a religion for the masses. It's a religion for those who are serious about being on the path and making rapid progress on the path. It describes exactly what HPB was describing, how to get from wherever you are now to become a Chela and eventually one of the Mahatmas.
In the first sentence where we hear he's in a continuous trance state for his initiation, the last but one. Right. Does that mean after this there's one more?
I think the next one would be Buddha, a Buddha.
So as we've mentioned before, an initiation in our tradition in this context is reaching a level of expanded consciousness and potentially holding the title of a level or an office in the hierarchy. And Bodhisattva is one. That would be one stage prior to Buddha, and there are many under that. An accepted Chela, a student, would be the very first, and then different degrees of initiations. So that's what we believe he's doing. We don't really believe this is what he is doing. We're being told he's taking his, maybe it's a 7th, 6th, something like that, initiation.
It's kind of useless to try to put a number on it. As we've said before, there are major initiations, minor initiations. There are numerous steps in between. They know the truth. They know which ones are which, but they often give us only partial information for very good reasons. And that is because people have a tendency to latch on to stuff like that and just not let go of it. It's better to get general concepts of these things, even the secret doctrine. Don't latch on to one idea and just say, that's the way it is, because that's the way it's written. You will probably find out at some point that your conception, your translation of what was said has a lot of inaccuracies in it. But if you get too fixated, then you're lost. You go around and around in circles and you don't make any progress. That's our goal, is to make progress, not to argue details about anything, any part of it. Before we have actually a very special session today. We're going to hear from the Maha Chohan. But before we do that, I want to introduce again, photographically, some of our founders, some of the people that we've been talking about. We haven't even shown a picture of HPB except for the one on her poem. So this is one of the very best photos of HPB.
It looks like it's been touched a little bit.
It has. Yeah. It definitely has been touched up, but it is from an actual photograph. By the way, the comb that she's wearing in her hair is in the library at Olcott. They have a little case of curios, and that comb is in that case in the library.
Now, when we say Olcott, that's the National Center for the Theosophical Society. It's right outside of Chicago.
In Wheaton, Illinois.
And
yes.
we call it the Olcott Center.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, foreign theosophists sometimes don't know the term Olcott as a place, and that's what we are referring to as the national headquarters. It's a beautiful, beautiful property, and they've owned it since I think the early 1920s.
It's 40-some acres, and there are living quarters and study spaces.
And the Theosophical Publishing House is there. Okay, our next one is Colonel Henry Steele Olcott. He and HPB both in 1880 were 49 years old. Sinnett was 40, so they were only 9 years older than Sinnett was. And Hume was older. I think he was in his 60s, I believe, or around 60. Here, by the way, is a photograph of Alan Octavian Hume. very distinguished, very British. And he, as I've mentioned before, was kind of a hero in India. He was instrumental in founding a political party that is still in existence today, the India Congress Party. And they had a stamp, I believe this is from 1973, to honor his contribution to the history of India. He did a lot of good work for all of the problems that the Mahatmas had with him. We do have to give him credit for the good things that he did. Unfortunately, his bad characteristics were so profound, and the biggest one was his ego, that they eventually decided that they just couldn't work with him. And then here's the hero of our series, in a sense, Alfred Percy Sinnett. This is a little older, I think, than 40. I think he's closer to 60 in this photo. But again, he was very British, very buttoned up and proper. And that's the people that we refer to constantly in the Mahatma letters. All right, so we're deviating a little bit from what we intended to from our last session. We thought we were going to go right on to letter number 31, but then I realized that there's one more letter that is not part of the actual sequence. It's a special letter, but it was received by Sinnett and Hume. It was directed to them sometime in 1881, and there's no date as to the receipt of it or when it was sent, so we have to kind of go by the
Context.
Historical circumstances as to where it fits in, and this fits in perfectly pretty much right here. This is not a letter written by the Mahachohan, but it was sent by K.H. K.H. inspired H.P.B. to write this down, just like in the last letter that he inspired her to write down instructions for K.H. This is very similar, but instead, it was the Mahachohan who expressed his opinions of the Theosophical Society to K.H. and other adepts, and then K.H. in turn retransmitted that information to H.P.B. so she could actually write it down. This was sent before the retreat, obviously, which began October, right around the beginning of October, because the letter that H.P.B. sent to Mary Holland's Billing was right at the beginning of October, so right at the beginning of the retreat. This was before that, obviously.
And why wouldn't the Mahachohan send this information directly to HPB? Why would he go through KH, then KH to HPB?
She doesn't seem to have a direct communication with the Mahachohan. Let's discuss who he is. The Mahachohan is not just another adept, but he's the head of all of the adepts, and there are other adepts that are Chohans, but he is above even those.
So adept is not synonymous with Chohan. Chohan is an office or an initiation higher than adept.
Yes, exactly. And they have different, they can veer off in different directions, so I don't want to get hung up on that.
Okay.
But generally, in general, adept or Mahatma, then a Chohan, then the Mahachohan, generally. So that's who this is from, and it has really, really good instructions.
Do we know anything else about him? Was he in a physical form, do we know?
Apparently, because remember at one point there was an inference by, who was it, Alcott, that he may be in a European body, because he describes one of the Chohans and he doesn't specify who it is as being fair-skinned and blue-eyed and blonde hair. So whether or not that's the Mahachohan, but yes, he was in a physical body. All right. I think we are ready to go ahead with the letter.
One last thing. Is this letter in the book?
No. Yes, it was added recently. It was not in the original book. For whatever reason, we don't have the original copy that HPB wrote. It is in a private collection somewhere, but numerous theosophists did write out copies of it for their own use, just like they did with the other letters. And so we have a few of those available. And this came from one that Francesca Arundel wrote. Now, she was very meticulous, so I think she was probably very careful in her copy.
They should have just put it on the copy machine and made a copy of it.
There you go. Actually, yeah.
They can't. What letter is this numbered, though? So we're saying it's out of order in the book. We placed it here.
Right.
After 30, so in place of 31, this letter's here.
Right.
But where is it in the actual book? It's later.
I don't remember if it's in the appendix. There
okay.
are some additional letters in an appendix at the end of it.
Okay. Now that we have that context. Instructions given by Mahachohan for Sinnett and Hume. And again, this is transmitted from Mahachohan through KH, his mind, then mentally to HPB, and she's the one who wrote the physical letter to Sinnett. What a chain of command there. Okay. The doctrine we proclaim, being the only true one, must, supported by such evidence as we are preparing to give, become ultimately as triumphant as every other truth. Yet it is absolutely necessary to implement it gradually, enforcing its theories with unimpeachable facts for those who know, with direct inferences deduced from and corroborated by the evidence furnished by modern science. This sounds a lot like what we were reading from the Key to Theosophy.
Exactly.
Or was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Oh, my goodness. That is why Colonel Olcott, who works to revive Buddhism, may be regarded as one who labors in the true path of Theosophy, far more than any other man who chooses as his goal the gratification of his own ardent aspirations for occult knowledge. Buddhism, stripped of its superstitions, is eternal truth, and he who strives for the latter is striving for Theosophia, divine wisdom, which is a synonym of truth. And that's where we get the word theosophy from.
Yes, and the reason he brought this up is because Colonel Olcott was getting some flack from the two Englishmen. Why isn't he here helping us promote theosophy? He's off in Ceylon organizing Buddhist schools and reviving Buddhism in the island of Sri Lanka. Why isn't he here helping us? And this is why the Mahachohan said he is promoting theosophy for this very reason, that Buddhism is the closest form to theosophy that they had in 1881.
In its pure form.
In its pure form.
Stripped of the organization's desires and needs and additions.
Just as they denounced organized Christianity and the traditional Hinduism as practiced in India at the time, they also denounced Buddhism wherever it was infused and filled with superstitious beliefs. If you go to China and Japan and other Buddhist countries today, there are all kinds of nonsense that are connected with their ideas of Buddhism. You can go to a statuary shop and buy all kinds of different statues of Buddha, and they'll have statues of Jesus mixed in with them, and they will go to temples where they can be given the numbers to play in the lottery that day, and Buddha somehow blesses that and your chances are going to improve. This is the nonsense that people have attributed even to Buddhism, so it's not exempt from the problem.
For our doctrines to react practically on the moral code or the ideas of truthfulness, purity, self-denial, charity, etc., we have to preach and popularize a knowledge of theosophy. It is not the individual and determined purpose of attaining nirvana for oneself, which is only an exalted and glorious selfishness, but the self-sacrificing pursuit of the best means to lead our neighbor onto the right path, to inspire as many of our fellow creatures as we possibly can to benefit by it, which constitutes the true theosophist.
All right, that's what theosophy is all about. It's not about attaining nirvana for yourself. It's about learning how to attain nirvana and bringing as many people as possible along with you so that they can help train other people. It's not selfish at all. It's the absolute opposite of selfishness. It's about brotherhood. We're one. We're one group, one family. Let's help everybody, not just me. What's in it for me? There was something else that I wanted to point out, and that is that HPB mentioned somewhere else that nirvana and samadhi are exactly the same thing. We call it samadhi when a person attains it in the physical body during life, and nirvana when you attain it after your physical body has been released.
The, quote, intellectual classes, end quote, reacting upon the ignorant masses which they attract and which look up to them as noble and fit examples to follow, degrade and morally ruin those they ought to protect and guide. Between degrading superstition and still more degrading brutal materialism, the white dove of truth has hardly any room to rest her weary, unwelcome foot. I love the way he writes. It's much
I had
smoother.
to do a lot of editing.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah.
So the couple paragraphs we just read would have been 2 pages long?
It was, and there was some very confusing stuff inserted in between those two
Really?
lines. Yeah. That's why I'm glad I found that quote where Cage says, if you can find a way to transmit this more clearly, go for it.
Well, thank you for that. Okay. Wow.
So he's pointing out that the higher classes, meaning the more educated, the more sophisticated, those who have more opportunities in life, ought to be looking out for the poor people, the uneducated, those who don't have the same opportunities, because supposedly in 1881, those lower classes looked up to those people and said, oh, I want to be like them. I don't know if that's true today or not. It's a very different world today. But the point he is making is that if you do have opportunities in life, it behooves you and it's your responsibility to help other people. Don't just keep everything for yourself and be selfish about it. Make the whole world a better place by sharing your knowledge, your understanding with other people. It's really simple.
It is time that theosophy should enter the arena. No messenger of truth has ever achieved during his lifetime a complete triumph, not even the Buddha. The Theosophical Society was chosen as the cornerstone and the foundation of the future religion of humanity.
Repeat that again.
The Theosophical Society was chosen as the cornerstone and the foundation of the future religion of humanity. He's not saying that it would be a religion. This is the
Right.
cornerstone and foundation
Exactly.
of the future
It
religion.
was chosen to be the transmitter of information. Now, this was 1881 when HPB was alive and was the active transmitter. You have to ask yourself, is that still the case today? Do we have anyone we have several, I don't know how many different theosophical societies in existence. There are probably a dozen of them. Does any one of them have one person who we can count on as being a transmitter of information for the Mahatmas today in 2024? I haven't found them, if there is. I haven't found a single person. But maybe someone else knows.
And there's a chance that the person, if a person exists today, which we're not convinced that there is, this person might not be in a theosophical society.
They might not, or they might be on the very fringes. They may study theosophy, they may attend some of the meetings or conferences, but they may be way out on the fringes and smart enough to keep their mouth shut.
To achieve the proposed objects, a greater, wiser, and especially a more benevolent intermingling of the high and the low, of the alpha and the omega of society, was determined upon. The white race must be the first to stretch out the hand of fellowship to the dark nations, to call the poor dark races brother. This proposal may not suit all, but he who objects to this principle is no theosophist.
So are you saying a white supremacist can't be a theosophist?
Pretty much.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Oh my gosh.
No, the white supremacists need apply.
It's interesting how this happened though. Like, how did the white race become like so egoic? Like, we're the Aryans, how did that even happen?
Well, the whole term Aryan is interesting because
we can talk.
You know who the first Aryans were.
In India, they were dark skinned.
Exactly. They had dark skin.
Yeah.
I wish I had a picture. When I was in India, I specifically took a picture of a common everyday worker in India who was black as could be, blacker than anyone in Africa, and yet he has perfect Caucasian features. And those are the first Aryans. That was the first Aryan group.
And when we say perfect, we don't mean that that's the perfect feature. It means he had features that
were perfectly European,
non-Eastern.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and so yes, in some ways, the fifth root race, we'll talk about root races in the future, is more advanced mentally, but spiritually they are not more advanced, as we found out. What did Cage say? He said, spiritually, we will always be your masters. And there you go. It's that easy. Each race, each root race, each sub-race has specific features which are emphasized. In our case, it's the mind, but we have developed it at the expense of our spiritual nature, and that isn't a good thing.
In view of the ever-increasing triumph as well as misuse of free thought and liberty, how is the combative natural instinct of man to be restrained from inflicting hitherto unheard-of cruelties, tyranny, and injustice, if not through the soothing influence of a brotherhood and of the practical application of Buddha's esoteric doctrines? It's very eloquent. How much did you edit out of that one? Was that one?
A lot. I don't remember specifically, but I did spend 6 or 8 hours editing this.
Wow. For, as everyone knows, total emancipation from the authority of the all-pervading power called God by the theists, and Buddha, divine wisdom, enlightenment, or theosophy by the philosophers of all ages, means also the emancipation from that of human law. Once liberated from their dead weight of dogmatic interpretations, personal names, anthropomorphic conceptions, and salaried priests, the fundamental doctrines of all religions will be proved identical in their esoteric meaning. Oh, that's a mic drop. That's a mic drop.
So
that is amazing.
This goes along. That's why I inserted that here, because after our last session where he was denouncing religions, Christian, Hinduism, Mohammedanism, as he called it at the time, Islam, he was denouncing them. And now we find out it wasn't the religion he was denouncing. He was denouncing how it was practiced in the current time.
Do you think the Mahachohan is saying this because he wants to make sure that KH's letter is not misinterpreted about denouncing.
I'm wondering if maybe that was the reason.
I think we should read that one again. Let's, if
Yeah.
that's okay. For as everyone knows, total emancipation from the authority of the all-pervading power called God by the theists, and Buddha, divine wisdom, enlightenment, or theosophy by the philosophers of all ages, means also the emancipation from that of human law. Once liberated from their dead weight of dogmatic interpretations, personal names, anthropomorphic conceptions, meaning like God like a human, and salaried priests, the fundamental doctrines of all religions will be proved identical in their esoteric meaning. Yes, the core of all religions is the same. The core is the same.
It is.
Osiris, Krishna, Buddha, and Christ will be shown as different means for one and the same royal highway to final bliss or nirvana. Thank you, Mr. Mahachohan. Thank you for saying that.
So this clarifies everything.
Our book is called Ancient Wisdom, and we certainly didn't coin that term by any stretch, but the term Ancient Wisdom is used to point to this core truth that all other spiritual traditions and religions claim to have, but they, misinterpret and water and change and add and subtract. But the ancient wisdom is one. It's one.
It's exactly right. And if you could take one of these exoteric religions and sift out the garbage and collect only the pure gold, this is what you would come up with. But why go through lifetime after lifetime trying to do that when you can go to the source? They brought it to us in a modern format in the form of theosophy.
Yeah. Many people don't want the data of the truth, like the information. We enjoy the names, the we want a man to grant us a wish kind of thing. We want that genie in the bottle kind of thing. I'm here for you, to serve you. We want the fanfare. We want to put a penny on the Buddha statue and ask for some lottery numbers. People want that. Be honest with yourself. Do you want that? Or do you want like the cold hard facts? And the universe is benevolent, though, by the way. It is benevolent. There's no punishment. But sometimes we don't want that. We want the flowery coddling.
We want the drama,
Yes.
and we want the emotionalism. The ecstasy, the agony and the ecstasy of religion. Yes, it's very dramatic, but is it useful?
Yeah.
He points out 4 specific individuals who were enlightened beings. Osiris, in Egyptian times. The Egyptians had their mystery schools, obviously, and HPB's first book was Isis Unveiled. So Osiris and Isis.
And Horus, I believe, was the third one.
Horus was the trinity of the Egyptian trinity. And Krishna was an enlightened being for Hindus. Buddha, of course, was the bringer of the Reformation to Hinduism, and Christ was the reformer of the Law of Moses. And yet, as HPB points out in other places, most Christians today have chosen to throw out the teachings of Jesus and go back to the Law of Moses, because they like that vengeful God. They like the drama. They like being given the authority to call other people sinners and to denounce them. They love that. So if they were true Christians, they would be theosophists today. There would be no difference between a true Christian and a true theosophist.
Jesus, his actual words was theosophy, because theosophy is the truth, and he spoke the truth.
Well, and for any of our Christian viewers, Jesus said he fulfilled the Law of Moses straight out. He just told them, this does away with the Law of Moses. I give you 2 commandments to replace. There weren't just 10 commandments in the Law of Moses. There are hundreds of them. Do you want to know what the 11th commandment was? Because we focus only on the first 10.
Brahmacharya. No, I'm just joking.
You wish. No, it all had to do with how you treat your slaves.
Oh, what?
That was the 11th commandment. How do you treat your slaves? So, yeah, if you think the law, go back to your Bible and read it.
Oh, my goodness.
Go find the 10 commandments and then start reading the laws that came right after that. So Jesus said, forget about all of those other commandments, like don't work on the Sabbath, don't wear clothing made of two or more different fibers. You can't mix wool and cotton. Forget about those stupid rules. He said, I'm giving you a replacement. 2 simple things to remember. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength. And when he says God, he's not talking about this anthropomorphic God. He's talking about the God within. Your higher self, your ogoides, your true nature. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength. And the second is like unto it. Love thy neighbor as thyself.
AKA brotherhood.
And when he says as thyself, he's not saying as much as you love yourself. He's saying as if you two were the same person, as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. You are one with all, including your neighbor, whether you like him or not. It's really simple, but a lot of people don't like simplicity. It's too boring. That's really what it boils down to. They love the drama. They love the pageantry sometimes of church worship and the all of the fabulous outfits that the priests and their acolytes wear.
Mystical Christianity, that is to say that Christianity which teaches self-redemption through one's own 7th principle, this liberated Paramatma, or Ogoides, which is called by some Christ, by others Buddha, and equivalent to regeneration or rebirth in spirit, will be found to be the same truth as the nirvana of mystical Buddhism. That's interesting. I think we should be clear on what Paramatma or Ogoides is. So Atma is spirit, Paramatma is similar to the word Maha, is Para, the highest spirit. So that's the very highest part of ourselves before we are completely undifferentiated into the divine soup.
That's exactly right. It's the very highest spiritual part of our nature before we dissolve into absolute oneness.
And what what he's saying is that God, or the highest principle, Christ, that's what this is called. But in theosophy and in yoga philosophy,
right,
we're not using the word Christ, we're using Paramatma.
Exactly. So he's pointing out that all religions in their essence are one. So Christianity has the same truth. If you figure out what they actually meant originally instead of what they think it means.
Mm-hmm. All of us have to get rid of our own ego, the illusory, apparent self, to recognize our true self in a transcendental divine life. That's huge. We have to get rid of our own ego, the illusory, apparent self, to recognize our true self in a transcendental divine life.
Mm-hmm. Simple.
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, and by the way, the process of Raja Yoga does exactly that. That's the intention of the process of practicing Raja Yoga.
Yeah, you can practice Tibetan Buddhism or esoteric Christianity or Raja Yoga, and you'll get to the same spot.
But if we would not be selfish, we must strive to make other people see that truth, to recognize the reality of that transcendental self, the Bodhi, the Christ, or God of every preacher. Did he mean Bodhi or for
No,
Bodhi?
They use the word buddhi.
Buddhi is the level of ourselves that.
Buddhi is wisdom in Sanskrit.
Okay,
And
okay.
I think that's what they were referring to.
This is why even exoteric Buddhism is the surest path to lead men toward the one esoteric truth. As we find the world now, whether Christian, Muslim, or pagan, justice is disregarded and honor and mercy both are flung into the winds. Once the main objects of the TS are misinterpreted by those who are most willing to serve us personally, how are we to deal with the rest of mankind, with that curse known as the, quote, struggle for life, which is the real and most prolific parent of most woes and sorrows and of all the crimes?
So he's saying, we're giving it to you in pure form, but if you misinterpret it and start reinterpreting it to suit your own purposes, then you're no better off than these other religions.
Why has that struggle become the almost universal scheme of the universe? We answer because no religion, with the exception of Buddhism, has hitherto taught a practical contempt for this earthly life, while each of them, always with that one solitary exception, Buddhism, right, has, through its hells and damnations. Let's please read that one more time. We answer because no religion, with the exception of Buddhism, has hitherto taught a practical contempt for this earthly life, while each of them, always of course with the one solitary exception, has through its hells and damnations. So in other words, the other religions are scaring us
Yes.
into but contempt of this earthly life. Okay.
Well, yeah, he's pointing out that they love the physical life. What is the heaven world? It's going to be the perfection of physical life on earth.
Violins and grapes and
Well, streets of gold and angels serenading us. Their whole vision of the ultimate that could be had is just a different version of this hell that we're living in now.
And the only way they're trying to uproot us from the love of the physical life is to scare us with
Yeah, remember
hell and
talked about last time how people talked about the fear of God, and that was a good thing. You wanted people to fear God. That would make them. That would set them straight. He's pointing this out. This whole fear of God thing didn't make people less criminal in nature. In fact, some of the worst countries for crime are the Christian countries. So how did that work out?
through its hells and damnations, inflicted the greatest dread of death. Right, that's this dread of death. Therefore, we find that struggle for life raging most fiercely in Christian countries, most prevalent in Europe and America. It weakens in the pagan lands and is nearly unknown among Buddhist populations. Fear of death is largely unknown.
And that was in 1881.
Okay.
So who knows, today that may be less true, but he does make a very good point.
Teach the people to see that life on this earth, even the happiest, is but a burden and an illusion, that it is but our own karma, the cause producing the effect, that is our own judge and our savior in future lives, and the great struggle for life will soon lose its intensity.
In other words, we fear death, absolutely fear death. And so we do everything possible to latch on to what we've got. We don't want to let go. If we knew better, we wouldn't have this attraction for life, for the physical world. Your life, your exciting life, is actually on the higher planes. You just aren't aware of it. You have forgotten it. You used to know about it, but as you come into denser and denser manifestation, all of that evaporates and you forgot your divine nature. If you get in touch with your higher self, you will regain that.
He does say, though, that life is but a burden.
It is.
We shouldn't assume, though, that they are, annoyed with physical life and, oh, this is my last life, I'll never have to come back. And they're not, regarding life as just, it's not a hardship. We're here for a reason. Like, the earthly existence is for a reason. So
What
let's
is
not misunderstand that.
What is difficult is learning the lessons.
That's the part
You
that's...
can muddle all you want in this physical world. Some of the wealthiest people are the most miserable people on earth. So their wealth doesn't buy them any happiness.
He's saying the physical life is a burden because he understands what spiritual life is. And once we understand spiritual life, we'll realize that we are cribbed, cabined, and confined into these meat suits.
Yes, exactly. Try to put someone who has overcome all of this and has given up all physical existence, try to put them back in a physical body, and they will, as quickly as possible, do what they have to do and then go right back to their natural state, which is also our natural state.
There are no penitentiaries in Buddhist lands, and crime is nearly unknown among the Buddhist Tibetans. That's interesting. There are no penitentiaries in
Tibet.
Wow. Okay.
At the time.
The world in general, and Christian nations especially, left for 2,000 years to the regime of a personal God, as well as its political and social systems being based on that idea, has now proved a failure.
Yep.
Oh!
Yes.
Oh my gosh. The world in general and Christian nations especially left for 2,000 years to the... He's calling out the birth of Christianity.
Well,
2,000 years.
Yes, it was perfect. It was very well explained when Jesus was here on earth, and then it devolved from there into what it is today.
And it's really no secret why he's saying it's a failure. More deaths have been had, more wars have been fought in the name of this Christian God.
Look at the data. It's all there.
Gosh. If the Theosophists say, quote, we have nothing to do with all this, the lower classes and the inferior races, those of India, for instance, in the view of the British, cannot concern us, and they must manage as they can. If they say that, then what becomes of our fine professions of benevolence, philanthropy, reform, etc.? Are we making a mockery of them? And if it is a mockery, can ours be the true path? This is
he's
good.
making an argument here.
Yeah.
Do we have the true path or do we not? And what are you going to do with it if we do have the true path now?
Should we devote ourselves to teaching a few Europeans the explanation of bell ringing, cup growing, the spiritual telephone, and astral body formation, and leave the teeming millions of the ignorant, of the poor and despised, the lowly and the oppressed to take care of themselves and of their hereafter the best they know how? Never. This is so good. Perish rather the Theosophical Society with both its unfortunate founders than that we should permit it to become no better than an academy of magic and a hall of occultism. That we, the devoted followers of that spirit incarnate of absolute self-sacrifice and divine kindness, Gautama Buddha, should ever allow the Theosophical Society to represent the embodiment of selfishness and the refuge of the few with no thought in them for the many, is a strange idea, my brothers. Among the few glimpses obtained by Europeans of Tibet and its mystical hierarchy of, quote, perfect lamas, there is one which was correctly understood and described. Quote, the incarnations of the Bodhisattva, Padmapani, or Avalokiteshvara, and of Tsongkhapa, that of Amitabha, relinquish at their death the attainment of Buddhahood.
So what are they called? The ones who reject nirvana?
The Nirmanakayas.
Nirmanakayas, yes.
And those are in the last chapter of our book, we explain what that is. It's those who come back to earth and usually take a physical body again, but not always, for the precise, specific purpose of helping.
Rather than entering selfishly into nirvana because they want to enjoy it without any problems.
Are these names of...
These are people who are these Nirmanakayas in the past who attained Buddhahood and decided to come back.
Now, would you say they're exoteric? Like, were they in the world? Is there information on them somewhere? Do we know? Or
well, we know who they were at the time.
Okay.
if any of them are still in incarnation, they may just be helping behind the scenes.
Padmapani, Avalokiteshvara, Tsongkhapa, and Amitabha. Wow, I haven't heard the names, but maybe they are.
You can look all of these up, and you'll find information on all of them.
Okay. This is the highest, so they've attained the highest reward of bliss, which we said is nirvana, and of individual personal happiness, that they might be born again and again for the benefit of mankind. I didn't say that accurately. These people, these enlightened people, have relinquished at their death the state of Buddhahood, and they've been born again and again for the benefit of mankind. In other words, that they might be again and again subjected to misery, imprisonment in flesh, and all the sorrows of life, provided that by such a self-sacrifice repeated throughout long and dreary centuries, they might become the means of securing salvation and bliss in the hereafter for a handful of men chosen among but one of the many races of mankind. And it is we, the humble disciples of these perfect lamas, who are expected to allow the TS to drop its noblest title, that of the Brotherhood of Humanity, to become a simple school of psychology? No, good brothers. You have been laboring under the mistake too long already. Let us understand each other. He who does not feel competent enough to grasp the noble idea sufficiently to work for it need not undertake a task too heavy for him. But there is hardly a theosophist in the whole society unable to help it effectively by correcting the erroneous impressions of the outsiders, if not by actually propagating himself the idea. Oh, for the noble and unselfish man to help us effectively in India in that divine task. All our knowledge, past and present, would not be sufficient to repay him. Having explained our views and aspirations, I have but a few words more to add. And this is the second to last paragraph here. To be true, religion and philosophy must offer the solution of every problem. That's interesting. To be true.
And that's the crux of the whole situation. How can it be a true religion if it doesn't teach you how life works? How do you solve every problem in life? If it doesn't have the tools to do that, then it's not a true religion.
That the world is in such a bad condition morally is conclusive evidence that none of its religions and philosophies, those of the civilized races less than any other, have ever possessed the truth. Oh my gosh. The right and logical explanations on the subject of the problems of the great dual principles, right and wrong, good and evil, liberty and despotism, pain and pleasure, egotism and altruism, are as impossible to them now as they were 1,881 years ago. They are as far from the solution as they ever were, but... Was there something omitted there?
No, it's in the next paragraph.
Okay. But to these there must be somewhere a consistent solution, and if our doctrines will show their competence to offer it, then the world will be the first one to confess that that must be the true philosophy, the true religion, the true light, which gives truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
That's it. And then at the end, on the copy that HPB had written out, which we don't have, it was appended something written by KH himself, and he says, an abridged version of the view of the Chohan on the TS from his own words, signed KH.
Wow.
So that's it. The one and only letter or transmission of the thoughts of the Maha Chohan to our two Englishmen, Hume and Sinnett. And remember that in the charter for their eclectic Theosophical Society, the Shimla Eclectic, the one thing they had not mentioned was brotherhood. They specifically chose to leave that out of their objects.
He straight out says that there is no religion nor philosophy that has the truth on earth today. And
Yes.
most of the religions are even farther from the truth than they were back when Jesus was alive 1,881 years ago.
So periodically they send messengers into the world to reintroduce the truth. Buddha, Krishna, Osiris, Christ, Jesus.
Muhammad, would he be one?
Notice that that is not one that is mentioned.
It's not mentioned, yeah.
I can tell you I have tried and tried to find esoteric truth in Islam, and I cannot find it. And they denounce it, but they don't say that there's any esoteric form of Mohammedanism that would comply with their requirements. You might just as well say that Joseph Smith was a prophet. So is Mormonism, you know,
And Judaism is
even
mentioned.
Judaism, he didn't mention that one because Judaism is based on the law of Moses. And nowhere does HPB or KH or any of the Mahatmas say that Moses was an adept. Do you know who they do say was an adept? St.
Peter.
Paul.
Paul.
Not Peter, no. St. Paul, they do believe was an adept. And several of the Greek philosophers, among them Plato, they say was an adept. So there have been a number of enlightened people who have tried to introduce these concepts to the world. And each time they make an impact, it grows for a while, and as soon as that person is gone from the scene, they go back to their old ways. Just like Hinduism, we'll see, they'll bring that out several times, that it was really taking off. Buddhism was in India after the Buddha was no longer alive in that body. And then the Brahmin priests got their power back, and they're in full power today. Well, not so much, because materialism has pretty much replaced Hinduism in large segments of the Hindu population. Not so much among the lower classes, but among the higher classes, they've definitely adopted our materialistic ways. So there you have it. Words from the Mahachohan, and that very succinctly, after the editing, gives us one more example of what our duty is. If we grasp and embrace these concepts that they have taught us and put them into practice, then our duty is to share it with others. And that's what we're trying to do now. Is that it?
I think so.
All right. Paul is on his way to Costa Rica in a couple of days to lead a yoga retreat. And so it will be 2 weeks before we record again, but magically you will still see another video next week, because we have at least one in abeyance. We always are working on the post-editing part of a couple of different videos so that we can, as much as possible, consistently release one a week. At least that's what we've been able to do so far.
See you next time.
We'll see you next time.